They looked like California's golden boys, but behind those perfect harmonies, the Eagles were a ticking time bomb. Fistfights, beer poured over heads, and backstage threats turned this legendary band into one of rock's most chaotic stories. Today, we're breaking down every time a member of the Eagles walked out, and why their biggest hits came at such a brutal cost. Welcome to Backstage Melody. When the Eagles first came together in 1971, it was hard to imagine the storm brewing beneath their polished sound. Don Henley and Glenn Frey met as part of Linda Ronstadt's backing band, and their chemistry was instant. They shared a vision, crafting music that combined the smooth storytelling of country with the edge and swagger of rock. Together with Bernie Leadon, a skilled guitarist rooted in bluegrass and country traditions, and Randy Meisner, a soft-spoken bassist with an incredible high tenor voice, they formed a lineup that looked destined for success. In the beginning, everything seemed harmonious. They were young, hungry, and brimming with creative energy. Songs like Take It Easy and Peaceful Easy Feeling captured the spirit of the California sound, laid back, melodic, and endlessly catchy. But beneath the sunny melodies, Glenn Frey and Don Henley were already carving out their roles as the band's power duo. While the world saw four equal bandmates, Frey and Henley quietly assumed command, steering every creative decision with an iron grip. Frey's ambition bordered on obsession. He saw the Eagles not just as a band, but as a brand, a powerhouse that could dominate charts and fill stadiums. "This is not a democracy," he once told the group, making it clear that he and Henley were the driving forces. Henley, while less confrontational, shared the same relentless vision. Together, they pushed the band to rehearse endlessly, fine-tune every harmony, and strive for perfection on every track. For Bernie Leadon and Randy Meisner, this dynamic was both inspiring and suffocating. While they admired the discipline, they also sensed early on that their voices, both literally and figuratively, were being drowned out. The seeds of future conflict were already being planted, even as the band's star began to rise. Bernie Leadon was the Eagles' country soul. A multi-instrumentalist with roots in bluegrass, he brought a laid-back authenticity that shaped the band's early sound. Songs like Train Leaves Here This Morning and Witchy Woman carried his signature style, earthy, melodic, and distinctly country-tinged. But as the Eagles became more commercially successful, Leadon started to feel out of place. Glenn Frey wanted to push the band toward a bigger, louder arena rock sound, while Bernie preferred the stripped-down purity of country. Frey's perfectionism didn't help. He wanted every note polished, every show flawless. He could be relentless in rehearsals, drilling the band again and again to achieve his vision. For Bernie, music was supposed to feel natural and alive, not like a choreographed performance. He grew tired of what he saw as Frey's obsession with commercial success, which often came at the expense of artistic freedom. Their tension bubbled under the surface for years, but by the mid-70s, it was reaching a breaking point. During one heated rehearsal, as Frey once again lectured the band about their future direction, Bernie snapped. He walked over, beer in hand, and poured it over Frey's head, muttering, "You need to chill out, man." It was part joke, part rebellion, a rock and roll moment that summed up their clashing philosophies. For Frey, it wasn't funny. It was a direct challenge to his authority. That infamous beer incident was the last straw. Bernie Leadon soon left the band, feeling alienated and unwilling to compromise his artistic principles any longer. His departure marked the end of the Eagles' country rock era, paving the way for a grittier, more guitar-driven sound. To fill the gap, the band brought in Joe Walsh, a fiery guitarist whose wild energy perfectly matched Frey's vision for the next chapter. Randy Meisner was never the loudest voice in the room, but he was one of the most crucial. His delicate tenor and soulful bass playing gave the Eagles a softness that balanced their sharper edges. Meisner co-wrote and sang some of the band's most beloved songs, including the emotional ballad Take It to the Limit. Yet the very song that defined his brilliance also became his greatest burden. Unlike Frey and Henley, who thrived in the spotlight, Meisner was deeply introverted. He disliked the constant touring, the late nights, and the pressure of being on every single night. By the mid-70s, the Eagles had gone from clubs to stadiums, playing in front of tens of thousands. Each show ended with "Take It to the Limit," and Meisner's soaring high note was the emotional climax of the night. But as the tour dragged on, hitting that note, night after night, filled him with fear. He worried about cracking his voice in front of a massive audience, and the stress consumed him. On the Hotel California tour in 1977, the tension between Meisner's anxieties and Frey's relentless drive finally exploded. One night, after battling exhaustion and illness, Meisner refused to perform "Take It to the Limit." Frey, who had little tolerance for hesitation, saw this as unprofessional and selfish. Their backstage argument quickly escalated into shouting and shoving, with Frey reportedly telling him, "If you can't handle it, maybe you shouldn't be here at all." For Meisner, that was the breaking point. He loved the music, but he couldn't handle the toxic environment or the mounting pressure. "All I wanted was for us to be happy playing together," he later admitted. But happiness seemed impossible in the high-stakes world the Eagles had created. Shortly after the tour ended, Randy Meisner left the band. His departure was quieter than Bernie Leadon's, but just as painful, especially since his absence meant the loss of one of the band's purest voices. Replacing Meisner was Timothy B. Schmidt, who brought a smooth falsetto and a more easygoing personality, fitting right into the evolving dynamic. But Meisner's departure was a reminder of the intense pressure cooker the Eagles had become, where even the most talented members could be pushed to their breaking point. When Don Felder joined the Eagles in 1974, he was seen as the missing puzzle piece. His technical guitar skills were unmatched, and his ability to craft intricate riffs elevated the band's sound. Felder was the driving force behind the iconic guitar solos on Hotel California, which would go on to become one of the greatest rock tracks of all time. His nickname within the band, Fingers, was a testament to his lightning-fast, precise playing. But while Felder's talent was undeniable, his relationship with Glenn Frey and Don Henley quickly became strained. Frey and Henley, now firmly in control of the band's direction, treated Felder less like a partner and more like an employee. Felder resented this dynamic. He had joined a band that originally operated as a democracy, but by the mid-70s, it was clear that the Eagles had transformed into what he called the Don and Glenn Show. Felder's quiet frustration simmered for years, but one incident during the recording of "Victim of Love" pushed things over the edge. Originally, Felder recorded the lead vocals for the track, a rare moment where he would take center stage. But while he was out of the studio, Frey and Henley decided to erase his vocals and replace them with Henley's. When Felder discovered what had happened, he felt completely blindsided. Though he tried to brush it off, the move deepened his belief that Henley and Frey saw him as expendable. By 1980, Felder's resentment had reached its boiling point. During a benefit concert for Senator Alan Cranston, tensions flared in front of the entire audience. After Cranston thanked the band for performing, Felder sarcastically muttered, "You're welcome, Senator." Frey, already annoyed with Felder's attitude, took it as an insult. "I wanted to kill him," Frey later admitted. Throughout the show, the two exchanged thinly veiled threats, whispering through clenched teeth while pretending to smile for the crowd. Backstage, the situation exploded. Felder smashed his cheapest guitar in anger, stormed off, and jumped into a limousine. For many, this was the moment the Eagles' internal fractures became too deep to mend. The dynamic between Felder and Frey was never the same again, and it would ultimately play a major role in the band's temporary breakup. By 1980, the Eagles were unstoppable on the charts but completely broken behind the scenes. The Hotel California album had cemented their legacy, and the long run kept them at the top, but constant touring, recording pressures, and clashing egos had left the band on the verge of implosion. Glenn Frey later admitted, "We were sick of each other. Everything we did became a power struggle." The breaking point came during the infamous Long Beach benefit concert for Senator Alan Cranston in 1980. Don Felder, still simmering with resentment, sarcastically replied, "You're welcome, Senator," after being introduced on stage. Frey took it as an insult to both him and the cause. What followed was one of rock's most notorious on-stage meltdowns. As they performed "Best of My Love," Frey whispered threats to Felder through gritted teeth, saying, "I'm gonna kick your ass when we're off this stage." Felder fired back, equally enraged, and the tension was so palpable that fans in the front row could sense something was wrong. Once the show ended, all hell broke loose backstage. Felder smashed a guitar, Frey stormed out, and the band's relationships collapsed. The Eagles quietly disbanded, leaving behind a trail of bitterness. For years, when asked if they'd ever reunite, Henley famously quipped, "When hell freezes over." But as the 90s rolled around, time and a few massive paychecks softened old wounds. In 1994, the band reunited for the Hell Freezes Over tour, and the comeback was a sensation. Fans packed stadiums, and the Eagles once again became one of the most profitable touring bands in the world. Still, old rivalries didn't disappear. Don Felder, who had rejoined the band, was increasingly at odds with Frey and Henley over money. In the 70s, the Eagles had been a partnership, but now Henley and Frey controlled the business side and took the lion's share of profits. By 2001, after years of disputes over royalties and revenue splits, Felder was unceremoniously fired. He was stunned, later describing the experience as a nightmare. Lawsuits followed, with Felder suing Henley and Frey over unfair business practices. Though the lawsuits were eventually settled, Felder's departure was permanent. The once united Eagles were now divided for good, though their brand was bigger than any individual member. When Glenn Frey passed away on January 18, 2016, it felt like the end of an era. Frey wasn't just a founding member, he was the driving force, the architect behind the Eagles' sound and image. His death left an enormous void, not only in the band but in the world of rock music. Don Henley, his longtime partner in crime and rival, publicly stated that he couldn't imagine the Eagles continuing without Frey. Glenn was the one who started it all, Henley said. Without him, there is no Eagles. Fans mourned deeply, believing that the band's story had reached its final chapter. After all, Frey and Henley's partnership was the backbone of the group. Their tension, ambition, and creative fire had propelled the Eagles to the top, even when it drove others away. Without Glenn, it seemed impossible to replicate that magic. But true to the band's history of defying the odds, the Eagles weren't ready to fade into the past. In 2017, the unthinkable happened. The Eagles returned to the stage. Taking Glenn Frey's place was his son, Deacon Frey, who stepped into the spotlight with both reverence and courage. Deacon didn't try to imitate his father. Instead, he honored Glenn's legacy by singing with an authenticity that fans embraced wholeheartedly. Alongside him, country star Vince Gill joined the lineup, helping fill the vocal gap while bringing his own soulful style to the classics. This new chapter wasn't about rewriting history. It was about preserving it. Songs like Take It Easy and Lion Eyes carried a new emotional weight with Deacon on stage, reminding audiences of Glenn's lasting influence. While some skeptics doubted the band's decision to continue, the response from fans was overwhelmingly positive. The Eagles, even after decades of turmoil, proved that their music was bigger than their internal conflicts and bigger than any single member. Their continued touring in the years following Frey's death felt like a bittersweet victory lap. It was a tribute to the man who helped shape their sound, but also a testament to the resilience of a band that refused to let its story end. Through all the fights, walkouts, lawsuits, and heartbreak, the Eagles still found a way to soar. The Eagles' story is proof that brilliance and chaos can create timeless music. From fistfights to legendary hits, their journey wasn't easy, but it shaped one of the greatest bands in rock history. If you enjoyed this breakdown of their rise, fall, and drama, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more untold music stories from Backstage Melody. Which Eagles moment shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts.